So yeah, thank you for coming. Super appreciate it. My name is Oggy, aka Oggy Worlds in the Metasphere, running without any fear and all that shebang. So yeah, I'm kind of wanted to kind of put this little workshop about creating VRMs. Kind of like my journey on it started really kind of creating characters and then working with um, kind of like CG and VR for a while, and then kind of when the Mona opened up possibility of doing VRMs back in autumn, I kind of jumped on it and ended up creating like a micro collection of all individual one-on-one in droppables. And then recently, when Mona did a grant, I applied because I wanted to share some of the knowledge that I acquired throughout it to kind of create a kind of like a mini but fairly intense workshop of 6 sessions to get people from early points to the more kind of complex VRM avatar creations. So we kind of explore the digital identity of the future as it is to come and as it is now, and looking at how we interoperate throughout all these different metaspheres through these avatars. And obviously, like I'm sure you all saw like the stuff yesterday with Apple, like these things will only continue to become even more prevalent in our worlds and lives. They're going to be building using Unity. So we're basically in a good place for it. So like a relatively overview just to kind of so you know how the timings will go. We have 6 sessions. We're going to break each session down into few parts. So in the first part, we'll do like an introduction. And for this first one, I'm just introducing myself to you, basically. And then hopefully, as we kind of get more deep into the creations, people will be introducing their own projects, their own builds, and we can kind of start looking into helping other people with their things, troubleshooting things if need be, kind of what we are trying to achieve collectively out of this, because this isn't a lesson that I'm just didactically talking to you. So if you have any questions at any point, just ask, basically. If I'm in VR, you may have to just interrupt me because I may not see your hand, just as a kind of thing. But yeah, just kind of open up and just be vocal about it. It's a two-way, well, multi-way street, so we can kind of communicate together, and we all have different skills as well. So some things and blind spots, and some things I may not know, and vice versa. So yeah, if there's anything, there's no stupid questions. There's nothing like dumb. Like we were all at one point like not knowing how to do anything at all, not even making a pixel. So yeah, hopefully we all got a little bit of kind of CG knowledge here and stuff like that, so we can kind of follow along. But if I start going over anyone's head, or if everyone's finding what I'm talking about like super kind of lowbrow, just give me a point, and I can adjust, basically, so to kind of create that interplay effectively. So let's just open up with just like a little micro presentation, so we can kind of just all get on a same board, basically. Just unos segundos. Let me just share this quickly. Share screen. Boom. Sweet. So this is So this is basically VRM power. It's giving power to the VRMs. VRM is it's just a file type of an avatar. So basically, what an avatar in metaverse, or metasphere, as I tend to call it, is it's basically a GLB GLTF file with a skeleton rig inside of it. It is locked into humanoid, so we'll address that at a later point, how we can break out of it. So it's bipedal, it's got 4 limbs, it's got arms, it's up straight, it's got a head, a torso, all of those things. So yeah, like that's kind of like what it kind of means. I thought for ages that VRM is like a virtual model avatar or something along those lines. But the more I dug into it, like there doesn't seem to be any kind of a definitive word of what actually stands for. So it seems to be like many different interpretations on it. So if someone like finds out what the definitive initial meaning of it, it'll be great. You can all find out about that. So yeah, so what are these avatars? We're running through the whole metasphere through metaverse spaces here in Mona, other places as well. Kind of like it's almost like kind of gamified experience, but it's also about community, about meeting people, about interacting, about talking, and we're communicating through visuals, and all of this is visual data, and it's based on WebGL, so you can hopefully get on mobile eventually fairly easily with most places. I think everything's going towards that end, that the mobile and desktop kind of like fuse together at a midpoint somewhere. So we are basically inhibiting these digital identities. They're basically like PFPs from the Web 2 world, but they're in 3 dimensions in a 3-dimensional environment right now. And they will be, in some places, they're also like VR chat and stuff like that. They're in an immersive environment. So we are inhibiting these kind of characters, and we can change them. We can have more than one. One day you can be a blue skinned dude, another day you can be a dark assassin. And it kind of gives us a chance to express ourselves more than we would be otherwise. We're basically kind of trying to kind of to identify ourselves in the meta worlds, in the metasphere, trying to kind of like communicate more than just we can do through text or vocal and everything else. And a big part of that, like in real life, is an avatar that we effectively wear. It's like it could be an expression, like a flex, like expensive car or something like that, or a watch, or it could be kind of saying like I like things which are kind of cool and kind of with gruff and breaking and glitchy and stuff like that. So you can kind of intentionally create like an avatar which is broken effectively, or you can go for something really delicate, or you can go for something that's very robust, or it can just be a cube. So like the options of what we can inhibit are endless, and whatever imagination kind of holds. One thing is we are looking at optimization for the low end mobile. That means that we're looking at heavily optimizing these things, and there is a restriction in a palette of that. Like, so if you imagine like if we're painting with many colors, we are basically going to be painting with pixels effectively, and pixels and vertices and sides and polys, and there's like a restriction on that. So we're going to be aiming for all of these avatars to be one mesh, one material, and under 10,000 polys or 20,000 triangles. So that means that there will be mobile optimized. Kind of that's our ceiling that we're going go below. I mean, you could make bigger avatars, and we'll kind of explore about that. But they're not optimized. So if you want to have like hundreds of people in one room, they will become difficult. And with these kind of various VRMs, we can explore different places. We can go to different portals. And the interesting thing is like they also change based on the world they're in. The HDRs play a big role, as well as the colorizations that are in. You can be reflective, you can be in a kind of like a weird, wild space. And it also allows us to kind of think of creating these avatars that it can exist in a particular space, or it can be interdimensional portal hoppers. So it's kind of like all those things to kind of consider in the way we're creating it, because a lot of this happens in the original point of design. And it can be just kind of beautiful scenes that we can go into, like we can just explore even on our own into new places, new digital avenues and horizons where things haven't been before. And that's like a beauty about it. And also kind of just creating something by yourself and putting that and inhibiting that, like you kind of wearing it, driving it, whichever term we need to kind of decide on some point. Something like is very special about that. It's one thing about creating a character and then you're seeing it come to life, and then another thing kind of seeing it come to life in VR life scale, and another thing when you kind of create it and you move it and everything else in a way that you can. And we'll be going through like all the usual stuff, like so there'll be how we can rig them so they can kind of do a little rigor mortis dance and everything else, how they can work in various ways. They say good things come to those to wait, and there'll definitely be some weight painting, which is something that I don't think anyone really super enjoys, but there are some ways of making these VRMs, which are low poly things, a bit more fun and utility based in the weight painting, so we can save some time and make the process a bit less painless. Also, like talking about like textures, UV unwraps, how we can basically like get them in and everything else, and get kind of like a rich texture throughout it. And we'll be using kind of like noodles to kind of look at the generative things, which will allow us more interoperability within our own design base. If we're making, for example, a genera, which is what I made, like a genera, a micro family of characters which are interlinked in the kind of design style, these things kind of help immensely. And we end up with a character, and that character is going to be interoperable, movable, and everything else. So it can also be kind of a bit fantastical in various ways. And looking basically to kind of put like the heart into all of this, to put like a soul into our digital creations, so they're more than just kind of quick little flicks of a digital brush, so they have something that's visceral to them. And that kind of happens as we go through the creative process. They start to acquire a life of their own. And there is also something kind of like quite special about anthropomorphizing a virtual character. Kind of quite fun in a way. It invokes the child in us and the play element, but also kind of having that acquire its own existence and its own kind of lore and story within our own minds, if not the other people's as they come interactive. So that's like kind of an overview of what we'll be covering across the whole thing, and as well as like today. So today we're going to be doing like basically a very kind of short speed run through the overview. So I'm going to like make a character and get it through all these points just to get everyone at kind of like a startup level. And so we all know what we'll be making and stuff like that. And then hopefully people kind of like have a crack at that you can try and follow along. I'll be going fairly quickly with this, but in your own kind of free time, and try and get one out in like a half an hour or an hour to kind of do it fairly quickly. And if you can follow along, like super duper. But yeah, for my weapons of choice, I'm going to be using for modeling, sculpting, drawing, VR Quill, because it's fairly fast. It's what I'm really familiar with. And also I can kind of draw into it as I'm kind of talking to you peeps, which kind of makes it a bit easier. You can kind of make them out of anything. You can use straight in Blender or sculpting tools, or just literally like putting blocks up and down. You can use like Gravity Sketch out of VR tools. Medium is a bit harder because there's a lot of optimizations, but I will talk about optimization quite a lot. So hopefully we kind of help people bridge those kind of those gaps as well. You obviously can use like any other kind of tool, or it's like a ZBrush or like Nomad is pretty good. It can be like fairly optimized. So you can make something like, on an iPad, basically sculpting it and then put it in to kind of get a very cool kind of character later on, which means you can also make these on the go anywhere, which is super cool. Sort of that. But yeah, so kind of that's the kind of drawing sculpting stuff. I will be primarily rigging these guys through Mixamo. There are a few other options on the market. However, I find that Mixamo is super quick. It's kind of basically down and dirty rigging that we can kind of adjust. But because it is fairly simple, it doesn't do as many kind of weird glitches, while some of the other things occasionally will give you a weird glitch, which even though it can be more precise in the rigging to start off with, just fixing those glitches takes an absolute ton of work. Realigning every single kind of a mesh to it is a bit of a nightmare. It's almost easier to kind of like get it approximated and then realign it in Blender yourself, as opposed to realign it in a different program. And I'll be using Blender as well. So we'll be doing primarily like UV baking and rig adjustments in Blender. So that's like a really nice little program that kind of works. It's free. It's super tiny as a program, like most of these are. So it can kind of fairly run. And because these files are fairly small, I think the most difficulty is going to be whether we could basically do the recordings well out of changing the programs. But it should be fair to run fairly easily on most other things. And then we'll finish everything else in Unity. So we'll be jumping to Unity and using Uni VRM, which is like an add-on to basically create VRMs in Unity. There is a Blender version as well, but yet again, the Blender version is fairly glitchy when it's comes straight into Unity worlds. It's not as consistent, but the Unity one is really nice and seamless and it kind of doesn't have as much, well, I haven't encountered any kind of glaring glitches as much as I encountered the other one. So it's a little bit more interoperable. And we kind of basically try to create a nice pipeline, a nice workflow, so that when you have troubleshooting, which we'll be talking about, especially in session 5, when you have these kind of troubleshooting things, having a very clean and simple workflow means you can jump from one thing to another and just fix little things and kind of do kind of that circular thing whereby you're not breaking anything by fixing stuff. And that becomes very important because with more kind of complex characters, there is inevitably a lot of troubleshooting that will kind of start to happen, especially as you kind of start breaking out of a mold of a humanoid. So that's like the basic overview. And we'll finish each session by doing a nice little run through metaverse. We'll be doing some Mona runs. So we'll get like some avatars and basically go for a little run around, see how they behave, see how they move and everything else, see whether we kind of like messed up somewhere and something doesn't quite work. So that's kind of how we finish each session on, kind of to celebrate a bit. And hopefully by the end of it, we're going to have like a bunch of different colorful VRMs that we can kind of all use, enjoy, and have fun with it and take some cool pics in the metasphere. So hopefully that sounds all right for everyone. So that's kind of the basic overview of how the things are gonna go down. That's all right. Just give me some symbols or whatever. So let me just awesome, happy days. We've got some fingers up. So fantastic. So let me just set up the next stage. Share screens. Change the window. And yeah, cool. So we're going to start to make something like pretty much immediately now. Yep. In the meantime, I'm just going to kind of go over a few things so we can kind of have that in a kind of communication way, so we know what we're talking about. Oh, well, but as I said before, like if there's any point something's not quite understandable or straightforward or stuff like that, like just feel free to kind of like shout, or you can put like a message in the chat, and I'll aim to kind of like answer that as well, which is super sweet. So here we have like got like basically a basic VRM model. This is Zion from my collection of Metadromoi of the 12 of them. So he's kind of like using a humanoid model, but it's kind of breaking up a little bit. So I've got all of these kind of various additions together. So we will be making everything to start off with in a T-pose. So we're looking to create a character in a T-pose from design stage. That means that we don't have to kind of mess around. As you become more advanced in that, or maybe you already are, you can be more fluid with creation. But we're trying to basically get the character in a T-pose so we can rig him and weight paint him and UV and everything else. So when I mentioned the whole kind of bone structure and everything else, if we put on the overview, we have like all the little bones here. They're kind of, they basically are rigged to all the little kind of points within a character. They kind of do their own little thing, and they should be all a little editable. So if we go here, you can maneuver them, but that's not what I want to do. From above, escape, undo. There we go. So jump back in, cruise on. So we got like maneuverability. So here I'll try to be clever and like rig it with the ribs coming out, so we can kind of do all these various things. But that's kind of what we're trying to do. So each segment of the character is basically linked to a specific point in a bone, and it becomes obviously a lot more complex when it comes to the fingers here, which is we kind of try to get the fingers nailed fairly easily. Today we'll basically do like a very simple hand without going into too much detail on the fingers, but there's a couple of kind of cheats you can do to ensure that this gives you the least amount of headaches in the process, especially if you're making more than one VRM. It really does help. And so you kind of get all that. And then we were talking about kind of things like weight paints and how that all kind of works. It's basically I'll go through kind of details on this. We'll do the weight painting sessions, but basically you go back from your pose mode into your object mode. Let me just make sure that you actually see what I'm doing, so make it more child friendly. Argent mentions. Cool. So you can actually see the text a bit better. Cool. So grab that. We'll grab that. So we got select. So basically, what we do is we select one part of the bone. So that's the full skeleton. That's your rig, kind of. And then you'll select one mesh, and you go to your object and go to weight paint. And then you have like your weight paint there, basically. So it's showing us that this isn't affected by any part of that. I'll use control to kind of grab a part. So that's my top of the character's head. That shouldn't affect anything. This little part is going to fully affect his head as it's a robot. So, well, it's kind of cybernetic organism. So it kind of like, it'll be fully affected by that. And then that shouldn't affect it either, because that's hinging onto that little part. So that allows us to kind of see how the weight painting is done. In some other parts, whenever we want to change to a different object, kind of have to jump back in, choose that. So for example, let's go for these neck cables, which can be much more complex. And so if we have a look at here, we can see there's a little bit of impacts. So when there's differentiation in the color, like red is fully impacted, so it like moves 100%. Blue is completely not. So each bone is going to affect a certain part of the stretchiness here, basically. And if you go here, we're going to see that's all kind of like rubberization. So it'll give us all of that activity. And you can also kind of check while we're doing it, how it kind of works. Does it kind of break somewhere? Does it kind of not break? It's especially because we start painting in there. And you can kind of see like various bones will do various things. So here I wanted the cables to be a lot more rigid, so they're closer to the red spectrum in color. So that's kind of, yeah.
So did you rig this in Blender, or was this done in Mixamo and you brought it into Blender? And then complex?
Yes. So I did like the dirty rig in Mixamo, and then brought it into Blender and then readjusted it, because Mixamo gives you a fairly dirty rigging kind of thing. You know, it's fairly good when it comes to kind of like approximations, but when you're talking about anything which is like, this guy's got a very large chest, like initially these things like were almost here. So to like move them around a little bit, move things over there. The head was like smushed, like as a kind of single line, so you got to readjust all those things, move things around there so they kind of like working away. So yeah, I kind of found that that's like a nicer kind of free flow of doing it. I mean, obviously you can, if you want a full on challenge, you can do the full rig straight in and create a rig in Blender from scratch. But because we're dealing with a humanoid shape, you know, there's already tools out there which can deal with that in the nomenclature and everything else. So it really helps in that way. But yeah, definitely.
And the weight painting refers to the tool in Blender which allows you to visualize where the rig's affecting parts of your avatar's flesh or mesh.
That's correct, yes. So, and to what degree?
So you're not actually painting, you're just using it to visualize how it's being affected by the rig.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So when we say like weight painting, I mean, you basically dab. So let's kind of jump in here and we'll go to, so just go to weight paint. So let's say I don't like the way it's kind of worked out and I want this part to affect it. So press Control and left click. So that's not affected at all. But if I go for the paint, oh, now that I've touched it, it's becoming affected, you can see. And then I'll use here weight, and let's say I want to add a lot of weight to it, then you can see you're kind of like deciding which parts are going to be painted on, which not. So that's going to, that kind of bone, that kind of like empty, basically, a triangle empty, is going to affect this part in the movement. And you can see how it's already moving it on. So it can be a bit finicky, but I thought we'll go a bit more detail specifically about weight painting, because there are ways to kind of make it less painful. I haven't found any ways to make it fully non-painful, but we're all praying for AI at some point. So let me just jump into the VR now. Hopefully this will work. So let me change windows, and we'll basically do a character from start to finish, and then hopefully that'll give us a. So let me go quill, change to quill. Cool, we're in. Sweet. Right. So I'm not going to see any reactions. So just shout now. Oops. Before I lose my microphone. Cool. So I don't know whether anyone has used Quill before. It's kind of, if you're familiar with my work, it's where I do most of my creations. I blame it on Flash, because it's got a very similar interface to it. Oops. Back in Quill. Cool. There we go. And so you can see like that's the kind of timeline, but we're not going to do any animation here, not, because it gets quite weird. We just lay out the things to kind of work on the VRMs. So it's got like a nice optimization tool just here, optimizing, which kind of helps in getting the things ready for the metasphere. As it's a VR tool, it's made to kind of be fairly optimized. So, but like each tool has their own kind of decimation things. Like there's a decimation blender, which we'll be working on as well. So they'll kind of help us with a thing. So let me just open a nice little VRM file. VRMs, open project. So this is where I'm depositing all my VRMs that I'll be kind of creating. And it's quite nice to kind of, I like working in VR because you can see the scale of it. Hello. And kind of how it works in various kind of ways. Let me just put the vertex on. So if I put this on, it basically gives me the wireframe of things, which is super useful when it comes to making stuff for the metasphere, because we want to get these things as small as possible. So that's just like a proto character that I've built up, but we'll do one from scratch. So we'll kind of just to show how actually kind of fairly easy it is to kind of make these guys. Let me just find where I've turned the Myrmidon troop off. And then I've got instructions are on. Cool. So my instructions goes for there. Sweet. And we're just gonna make a quick squiggle. I think everyone likes a squiggle, right? And what better way to kind of jump to Metasphere today than with a little friendly squiggle. So just kind of like gonna make like a really simple one, because the point is to kind of like really kind of see what we can do with it, the whole process, and then we'll kind of start diving into the humanoid structures next week. So let me just let it out. And whenever I'm kind of making things, I like to kind of just give myself some kind of straight through line. That way I've got something I can work with, and it's going to be humanoid. So we can kind of go basically around center time. Like this is going to be super rough. And I'm going to raise it a little bit up there because, it's a humanoid, isn't it? And jump back in there. Cool. and a few adjustments, kind of make it, more of a human. So that's just where it's going to go, more or less. Oops. I'll just make it go straight for the ease of it. And then I'll just copy paste them. So we just get where they're going. So basically that's our hips, his third leg, because, why not? We'll make him a bit janky and uneven, kind of on purpose for this one. It's, and let's just like shoulders. And then we have like arms, elbow, and that's going to come up to basically just above your knee. And I'm fairly lazy in creation, so I like to just save myself time whenever I can. When I say lazy, then I tend to make something really big. And then we'll do like a little head here. So super simple. I'll just get rid of that. And then we have like a little character there. It looks a bit too triangular for me, and I like to have a bit more kind of a mood to it. So I just make it a bit happier and go like. So if you think about the bone structures and everything else, it's torso. Oops. It's basically torso, stomach, hip, bam, thigh, knee. So we're going super simple. And oops, shin. And we'll do like just a squiggle of a foot. I like this one more. And let's make it a bit more stretchy. Cool. Now let's connect some things. Show there. Take this off. Get it a little bit closer to this. Delete this, and then flop it there. And so like for the hands, we're going to keep them like super simple. Kind of may want to have a little bit more depth here. So remember how I mentioned we're going to do a T-pose? We're going to do a T-pose. So in our design element, hit it straight off. Bam. I kind of find it useful to kind of, when I'm doing characters without any refs or any kind of direct measurements, to kind of see the length of the arm, to kind of first do them straight and then like put them in T-pose. So that allows me to kind of see where the hand's going to finish around the hip, around there, which is, yeah, it definitely does help. So you can just do that. Just a nice, quick, dirty little character. And let's make these things a bit thicker. They seem to be very thin. Oops. Boom. And poof, poof. And I'm going to take some of these traits off and keep it a lot more organic. And let's change his head. Kind of, I feel like we need a bit more character in here, so just stretch over there, do its spine. And I say, hopefully this will start to make sense as you kind of start bringing it in. So the nice thing about VR, it's really quick, but you can do this in almost any program to a degree. It's just about adjusting it to kind of create the image you want. And I'm not really worried about topology right now. This is what we're going to be doing in later sessions. Just get a few more lines. Cool. I'll take this off and just do a simpler hip connection. Now, if we are using something like Mixamo, basically this won't work in Mixamo at all. The reason is too many gaps, so you won't be able to read it. So we're going to do something that I kind of just call a buffer suit. So give them a round squiggle. we're trying to make stuff loose. Sometimes it's harder, so let's just go really big. Cool. So it's got something that's almost like a face in there, but not quite. Boom. Little thing coming up there. Sweet. So we got that. So that's, just make sure it's not leaning back too much, because we all like to have a little lean every now and then. Otherwise, we'll just start cleaning too much. So just put it there. So you kind of just readjust kind of a few things that you kind of see in the character. Make sure. And all these are basically for the purposes of rigging. I'm just gonna give him a little bit of a collarbone mark. Good. Cool. And then I think like squiggles should be a bit more colorful. So let's just do him a nice little kind of rainbowy color, like a squiggles of popularity. I'm just gonna do that. So this is like basically vertex paint that I'm applying on. And that's going to be useful when it comes to doing our UVs at the later point. So it kind of like, it really does help us speed up those elements together. We'll just go with blue, reduce it a little bit. Better ones. So we're almost there. So as I mentioned, like foot and knee, with the hip. Give his head a bit more fun. I kind of like that yellow. So put some orange there. Just like a very multicolored, super happy character. Also kind of helps when you turn everything off. You can almost see how it's going to look like in various kind of 2D elements, especially with colorization, which isn't that HDR. So okay, we have it. So we do it to the buffer. So for that, whenever you're doing it, you want to do it as a different mesh. So here it's a different layer. Other programs it's done it differently, but basically it's a different mesh that you're kind of trying to achieve. So this is one mesh that we have right here. That's all one thing. And just get his hands a bit more handy. So stretch him out a little bit, maybe a little bit of a thumb. Cool. Wow, that's terrible. Bam. Concentrations. Just get it. There you go. That's about approximation that'll kind of work. So I say hopefully it'll work. So we'll get like another layer, and that's going to allow us to create a kind of buffer layer. So here is just about creating like big shapes, which will cover everything else. And we'll take those off after the rigging process takes place. So hopefully this will just put it in there. So hopefully it's going to work. Oops. I'll double it up as well. Uh-huh. Cool. Gotcha. Sweet. I've got a tendency to kind of copy things just in case I make a mistake. Bam. And so we'll get like another layer of just the buffer, call it buffer, or a boiler suit kind of thing. It's just a big fat buff. So we'll do like a color that is not there, just so we can actually see what's happening. So like, yeah, let's go for blue. There's not really blue there. Not of this kind of kind. So we're just going to make big blue shapes. just to cover him in like very, very quickly. These don't have to be precise at all, but it's kind of just to kind of not freak out the rigging thing, and we get like something that's kind of a bit more interesting in our creations. Boom. Give them a little bit more width. So obviously this is, as the character goes, this is a literal squiggle diggles. And that. Some of it can protrude out, and that's not going to freak it out at all. But kind of find it useful to kind of get it just so it's working out. We can leave the neck there, but we'll raise it up a little bit, and we'll put a neck in there as well. So, and then for an arm, boom, that'll do. We'll just copy that, that'll do. And also gives us where the elbow joint is going to be as well, which is nice. So we rack that on there. That should come in there. Straight on. Fantastic. And put it in. Get its hand on so that just doesn't freak out too much. So this is like just a fairly quick and easy kind of character, but it'll illustrate the whole process of the things. So whenever you're kind of trying to make stuff, there's, especially with these VRMs, there's quite a lot to kind of consider of how it will actually work later on. So the more of them you make, the more kind of these weird shortcuts you'll find. So like that's going to freak out the program. So buffer it up. So either way, it's almost like when you're baking something in clay and you got to stick some things in there so they don't break off. It's kind of like that. Do the same thing for legs. Get those to the roof. And do that. Sweet. Boom. Boom. It looks like he's having a little accident, so I'll just fix that. Fantastic. Cool. And then maybe these can go in like hip. Oops. We can go more like the hips do, so the kind of. Yes, that's right. And we'll just put like little feet, and then he's ready to go to the next stage. So that's like the production process. So it's like when you have like a concept, it's kind of like very useful to know where you're going with that concept, so you kind of get there without too much wondering, unless you don't like wondering, in which case is fine as well. When you wonder, you discover new stuff, and it's really fun. But when you want to create a lot of VRMs or kind of like play with a certain kind of styles, the less time you spend on kind of chasing your own tail and more time spent on being creative, the more fun you have. Effectively. So I'm just gonna put some of these back in. So just kind of trying to make sure that there's none of these too many large ones, because it's just a squiggle really. Cool. So we have our squiggle diggle character. It's just in there, and now we're just gonna export it. So that's super easy. We're just gonna export it straight as an FBX. So for Mixamo, FBXs work great. Like they work really nice, straight in, like no trouble. So just go to export here, got like a nice little thing. But before we do that, talk about optimization. So here will actually tell us how many triangles there is. So the buffer is 9.4 and squiggle is 15.5, which is great. That's below, but we can get it even less than that. So let me just go on that optimization, and I'm just gonna optimize the current layer a bit. So we got like to 11. And also bear in mind that I made it intentionally very simple. So, we can optimize it more. I'm getting more janky. Here we go, 6.9. It's a nice number, right? And don't have to worry about a buffer too much. It's fairly smallish. And it'll allow the rigging in, but I'll just, for posterity's sake, let's give it like just so it kind of matches a bit. Cool. So we just got 2 layers we're exporting out. And let's name this guy Squiggle. Squiggle 01. And choose my FBX. That's fine. That'll come in handy later on. So just going to make sure that we export the meshes, like in Quill and everywhere else, like get those meshes out basically. And if you do export, that's done. So we can jump out from the VR. That stage is kind of finished, and we can go to the next one. Sweet. We're cruising through. So basically, we got that FBX, and let me just open up Mixamo. So we're going to go. The pipeline we're going to go is from here straight, because it's fairly well optimized, to Mixamo, to Blender, and then to Unity. If the optimization isn't that well done initially, you would go first to Blender, then export to as an FBX again, and then go somewhere else. Or if you're making stuff straight from Blender, obviously, you'll go from Blender onwards. But Blender's got some good optimization tools as well, which you kind of like jump in. And sometimes you gotta do some cleaning in there. Oh, let me just. So I need to jump in here, open up the Mixamo window. Here we go. Woohoo! We are in there. Fantastic. I need to jump in there and change the Mixamo merge. There we go. That's still recording. Happy days. That's actually working out right somehow. A miracle. And let me just drag that file in that I've just made. Yes. Hello? Oh, hi, sir. I didn't hear you.
My bad.
All right. Okay. So I just kind of heard an echo of that. I was like, oh. So I'm going to take the squiggle, jump to the Mixo, and I'm just going to upload the character. Mixing was free to use. You can just kind of sign up whether you have Adobe or not, which is nice. Hopefully it's going to stay that way. For Sufferless, it's really nice. And because this character is fairly simple, that should process fairly quickly. The more complex characters will still process, but take some time. So wow, that looks terrible. This is how they all start. It'll work out. So it's front facing, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't really have any fronts and back, but we can see from those hands on the left over, so I know which direction it is. So yeah, that's good. I don't need to orient it. And then we'll go to next. And it's relatively symmetrical, this guy, so we'll just go for use symmetry. Sometimes you want to make a VRM on an avatar which isn't symmetrical at all. I've made some of them which are very asymmetrical. And those I would like rig fairly dirty-ish, like even dirtier, kind of like a dirty martini rig in Mixamo, and then you'll do a lot of adjustments on one side. So it's always useful to start using symmetry, and then if it's asymmetric, you'll turn it off and then start moving it around. But with asymmetric characters, inevitably there's lots of like repair that you need to do. So let's go for chins going to the chin bone. Thereabouts. It's actually more on the other side, but that'll do. And let's go for wrists. Let's go for elbows. Let's go for knees. So I made them like do a little bit of adjustment here. Let's go for groin. So here I'm just going to turn off symmetry because I did it with too much symmetry. I'm just going to move that there. Move this one over here. And then move that there. Cool. So we've got like a bit of asymmetric rig. And we can just, I'm just going to do 2 chain fingers. So that's just a glove. That's kind of what we made. So it'll be all right. And we'll go to next. And this is going to take like around a minute or 2 to kind of do, which gives me enough time to refill my beverage. A little coffee. But yeah, like it's this is the kind of time you kind of like look at a character and thinking like, I could have done many things better or differently, but it's it's kind of how it works at this stage. Also, it's really useful to kind of Oh, there we go. That was even quicker than I thought. To kind of create like a file structure that you know and understand. Because when you start making lots of VRMs, you very soon start making like VRM squiggle number 782. So having where things go, it's always fun when you see a character kind of come to life so quickly. We were literally in VR like seconds ago, and here we are. It's kind of working. So we'll go to next, and that's basically going to import it here. And here we don't want to do any of the other animations. They will be useful to kind of grab later on, especially when it comes to like adjusting bones. But we're just going to go straight to download and download an FBX binary, all good. Keep it at T-pose and go straight on. And preparing download. Sweet. So let me just see where that's. I think that's gone into the right place. Yes, it has. So you guys can't see. I'm just checking whether it's in the right folder. What I was saying before. So we got that squiggle and that's downloaded as FBX. And now we're going to jump to Blender. All right. So let me just change the share screen. One day we'll get like a robot to do all this and be like, change the Blender. It'll do it for me instead of me trying to find these little windows.
Okay.
One. Yes.
So you created a double layered avatar made of 2 layers in Quill, and then you brought it into Mix as a single FBX, but it sees both layers, but it can rig for the 2 as a combined file.
Yeah, basically right? you can put like, I mean, I have placed 75 layer files before through Miximo, and it recognizes everything as a one mesh, so it does like a very generic kind of fills throughout it. And then you have to like adjustments. So the more layers you have, the more adjustments you'll need. But this will all make sense very shortly. So let me just go to Blender. But it's the cool thing about it. That's what I mean. Like with the other kind of things, it doesn't give you that option. So the ability to be kind of general in that way kind of works, right? So let me just take these drums off and go here. And I'm going to just get off my weight paint. And I'm just going to import the file. So let me go. It's an FBX. So doodaloo. And this should be straight to my downloads. Google FBX today. Is good. And here we go. Here's a little FBX. So whenever I'm doing stuff in Blender, I like to stick stuff in collections because things get messy very, very quickly afterwards. So we got it. So we can kind of see, here's our little character. You know, he's all there. He's all alone. He's like, oh yeah, I'm cool. So happy days. Now, remember I was saying about that buffer? Just gonna take the buffer off. And now we have a quick, rigged, dirty kind of little character right there. He's all good. He's all happy. He's all working. He's got everything there. So if you want to kind of check whether actually the rig made any sense, just go to quick pose mode, which is always useful to check as well. And there we go. So it's rigged terribly. You'll need lots of adjustments to make it work well. But for the purposes of the workflows, it's pretty much done it, right?
Nice. So yeah, if you had a character that you wanted to have a floating forearms and no upper arm at all, then you could use this technique of the buffer when you bring it to Mixamo, and then just to like hide the buffer afterwards. Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Exactly that. Exactly. It's super simple in a way. You kind of think of it like you're making an action figure, and there's a bit of like, you need to put some kind of link through it to kind of work. Like if you're making a mold or a master, So yeah, like it's literally kind of like it's like that. So you kind of looking in that way. So it's you could just import it like this into Blender and then put like a skeleton on it and do all that. But this is so quick, like it's just super fast. So we got that. So we got this little character. But if we go to our colorizations, it's pretty plain. Like none of those colors that we did like is coming out. So let's make it work. I'm going to jump quickly to Eevee, just for the purposes of speed. So you're not actually like losing a lot of frames as one does in cycles. Well, we'll bake in cycles. So we got it all like that, which is nice, but not great. So let's just select it. It's just one mesh, which is super cool. And if we look through the data here, object data properties, we have vertex groups. So this is all the colorizations and stuff. And that is all in there. Bam. So I'm going to jump into shading first. Just see where he's at. Oh gosh, it doesn't. So when we have it like this size, it's so different to work. And like one thing to note is it will give you like a weird shades when you export from XML. Whether you do like one thing or like no layers or multi single side materials, it'll just do these weird things. So get rid of that because we don't really need it. And I'm just going to use just one quick attribute. So Shift A, attribute, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be RGBA because they have changed. So if I go to base color, I'm getting something. It's not quite as colorful as I thought. I wonder why. So what if I? Is my lights on? I think I messed up somewhere.
I think you can do in the materials options as well. If you down on the bottom right there in materials, if you just select use vertex colors instead of RGB or perhaps.
I mean, like the RGB is the nomenclature for the vertex. So let me just see where to do. Oh, right. There we go. So like the color attributes of vertex. I think there's been an update on the quill. So it used to be RGBA, now it's just col. So like you're looking for the color attribute, what actually is the nomenclature, putting that in. Because it gives us, basically we need a principal BSDF map to bake the color. So we're just going to bake this. And like metal, like one thing is like, I'll go into bake now. So we got that character there. So that's kind of working. It's like nice and colorful. Happy Days is all squiggle wiggles. And it's nice, right? It's cool. So let's kind of bake this quickly in. And so we'll go to UV editing and we'll step out through the edit mode for a second by pressing tab. And I'm going to make like a new map here. And just keep it like a 1024, 1024 and call it wiggles. Just for the giggles, right? And boom. So we go here, that's all selected. I'll go back into the UV editor. And it's really useful to kind of press all just in case, because sometimes press A and it'll select everything that you already selected, because sometimes some parts don't get selected and you get like these weird gaps. So that's just what I found, like a peculiarity that kind of occurs. Like, very rarely, but it's every now and then. I think like it's 1 in 100. And then we'll press U and go to unwrap. And it's going to unwrap everything there. But it's super messy. So we'll go unwrap Smart TV project. And here we have angles and everything else. And I found there's actually the ideal placement of 0.009 of island margins. Otherwise, things start overflowing. It doesn't matter much for this guy, But for things which have more than one mesh at this stage, it makes the thing. Just keep it correct aspect, that's fine. And here we go, we've got a bunch of this stuff. So now we have to basically jump back to the object mode, everything's selected, and we're gonna have to go a little bit so I can actually see what I'm doing. Apologies. Kind of like, so let's go to 1.5. Cool. There we go. I was really struggling to find things. So when we bake, we have to bake in cycles. Eevee doesn't do baking, but at least cycles do. You can do it with GPU now. For a while, you can only do CPU baking, which is a nightmare. So make sure that's the right material. Yes, it is. Cool.
Okay. What is Illy? You've mentioned it twice.
Sorry? What is it I mentioned?
You said something Illy? Or maybe
Ellie?
I'm hearing you wrong. Ellie?
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, Eevee.
Eevee. Eevee, yeah. So a Blender has two basic, three kind of render engines, or four if you use Max Metal. Eevee is an NPR one, so non-physically based one, which is really good when you're like building things, getting stuff together, or having to do like long animation renders. I mean, it's gotten better and better. Cycles is a PBR one, so physically based render, and Workbench is kind of like your clay materials. And just we trying to get a lot of stuff in the same place to kind of organize it. So when it comes to baking of UVs, we have to do it in cycles. It's just the way that the code is kind of written. And we'll basically go to the make sure we're in cycles, supported, GPU compute, that should be fine, hopefully, because it's in the CPU. And we have that selected, so the material is selected, and we'll go to, so here we're just going to get the color in. We're trying to basically bake just one material for this character rather than multiples. So we're just literally going to use just one color for him. Because if you do like gaming, you'll do like normal maps and rougher maps and metal maps and stuff like that. But this is a Metasphere, and we're going for like super low files. So I'm just gonna click on the color, put it on diffuse, and image textures the output. So here to get like the output, we've got to put like an image texture into our shader material. Just gonna do Control A, image texture, fantastic. And this is where all the naming convention comes in handy. So we'll go to the image texture, that's right to the left-hand side, and we'll find squiggles. Make sure this is selected. Like if it's not selected, it's not going to do it. So we've got to select it so it's got a white outline on it. So if we come over here and press bake, it's going to bake to the target image texture, and it's going to clear anything that's beforehand. So that's kind of how it works. So literally, if we press bake, magic ought to happen. Texture bake, we got it there, should be fairly quickish. And bam, we got colorama right there. Wow, that's fantastic. But we know what's happening, like it's all there. So here we can immediately go and save it. So that means whatever we do, we don't have to be messing around with stuff. And I'm just gonna save it in my VRM Power Presents, so everything's in a nice place. And it comes as a PNG. We want to get it lower in, so PNG is going to be a fairly big file, so let's just use a JPEG, and it's going to basically be even smaller file, so super useful. Save that, we're good. But you may want to just test it out, like does this really work? So we can kind of just do that. That should be boom. And let me just see. Shading. Yeah. So it worked. So basically just got that squiggle image, just double check that actually did do everything, and that's what it's looking like, which is fantastic. And we got that saved. So with that is basically all we have to do in here. And we can kind of like jump out. So usually I like to kind of like save from Blender as an FBX, because I'll be joining files and everything else. And because our previous FBX has a buffer in, and we don't want a buffer. So we want just a squiggle. So you're going to just select the squiggle and select the armature. the bone structures, and we're going to export this as FBX. So we go to export, FBX, selected objects, just in case you have cameras, lights, and everything else, just going for like FBX, select objects kind of helps, because then you have to worry about everything else, because occasionally take off bake animation, because there's no animation in here in case you're doing other things, and that should be fairly good. Scale at 1, and let me just find that VRM place again. We're going to whack it in there. VRM Power Presents, VRM 0, 1, squiggle. Cool. So we got that, and hopefully that worked. So that's been exported. I'm just going to check on my end just to make sure that everything's functional. And yes, that's worked. Squiggle is in there. He's coming out in the viewer. He's got everything that's aligned. Fantastic. So now we're going to jump into Unity. So let me just change the file again, the window, and here is the one I opened earlier. Go live. Fantastic, that's working. Let me just change the recording into Unity. Fantastic. Sweet. Cool. So it's recording into Unity. So now we're going to jump. Let me just find my Unity. So we can go straight into that. Cool, I'm in there. So I've got all of these Wave 5 VRMs and everything else. You can see like I've made a few. This is all kind of coming to the metadromy, and they're aligned. And I like to use like just simple blocks so I can get like a visual idea of the height of things, as opposed to just the mathematical idea of the height. So I can kind of think like, okay, that's kind of how it looks like in relation to other things. Because when you're building like these things, we have like a 2-block height, 2-meter height, basically. But when you just have it abstract as a 2-meter, like what does that really mean? Like when it's on a small screen like that, like it's hard to kind of know. So I find like super useful just to put like a blockage there, and then you can kind of go from your perspective to your ISO and get kind of very precise measurements. So we're just going to basically drag the file in here, and let me just see where I can show drag in here. Yeah, this is my little fun place where I was playing initially. So I'm just going to drag the file in there, just the FBX. So literally just going to drag it in, and then we're going to drag our color, make a material, and then we'll export it out. We'll have a VRM in around 5 minutes, hopefully. Says I before everything breaks. So let me just open that up. Cool. So just drag the FBX, and that's in. We can kind of click on that and see there's an armature, there's a squiggle, there's that little single shing, and it's also kind of given us that it's there, which is great. So here we go up to the animation type, and we go from generic to humanoid and apply. That's quite important. If you don't do that, it's not going to work. Yeah. And then while we're here, I'm just going to drag that just that basically material we made. And that's already kind of made us a material there. But we may want to have some reflections. We want to have something like more interesting than that. So let's just make a new material, create material, and make it squiggle skin.
Hey, OG, sorry for interrupting, but your screen is making weird things. The streaming.
What?
I don't know if it's only my side or everyone else can see it.
No, yeah, I think it's every time you do a function, every time you
do you remember? Do you remember, Ogi, that yesterday I was telling you that with Unity you need to instead of streaming the window, change to full.
Oh, I'm in full. That's what I'm asking. Is it better now?
Yes.
So if I press something now, is that better?
Yes, way better. It's
Cool,
not flickering
excellent.
Great.
anymore.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that was just when I was basically plugging these things in. I don't know how to avoid that. Because you got to put some files in there. I'll just open in a different way. So cool. So you got the squiggle skin there. So we're gonna take that squiggles, and we're gonna stick it in our albedo.
It's doing it again.
All right. Huh. I'll try not to click anything.
Remember, no, it's not that it's not Unity that you have to have it in full screen. It's when sharing in Discord.
Uh-huh.
You don't share the window. You share the full screen.
Oh, I am.
Oh, yes. Now you are.
I literally am.
Oh
I
fuck.
wonder what's to do with the OBS recording. Because
Yeah.
like adding some extra strain to it. But yeah, I'm literally sharing. What if I go smaller screen on my end? Is that better for you guys at all?
Right now, it's not flickering anymore.
Right.
But now again.
All right. I don't know. I think this is just Unity.
What it means is to not specify the Unity in the share Discord. Just share the whole screen, the whole device.
Right. Let me just see what I can. Oh, I see what you mean. So that's just me being dumb. Cool. So
Oh, it's all good.
change windows. So just go for screen one, go live. You can all see yourself now. And
Yes.
bam. Is that better?
Yes.
Let me just click something. Is that better?
Yes.
Perfect.
Cool. Awesome. Happy days. Sorry about it, guys. Like I totally forgot about that process. I thought I did it, but obviously I didn't.
No problem. You fixed it really quick.
Well, yeah. Apologies for the flicker. Just make sure everything's still being recorded. Yeah, good. So it's all coming together. Cool. So we got our squiggle. He's a humanoid. He's got localizations on there. We made our squiggle skin material. So I kind of like metallics, just because I like the way they work. You think so? I'm just gonna give it like a little point. He's a squiggle, so he's like bright. So let's go 0.33. Happy days. And we'll keep everything else fairly simple. And because we're only putting one map in, like we don't really have capacity when it comes to data to stick all the other ones in. It's kind of how it works. You can go for like other styles as well. There's a standard. There's a uni VRM as well. So you can go for a flat one. The VRM 10 doesn't work very well. But yeah, I usually kind of keep to the standard because that way it's most interoperable with things. And for purposes of this one, this is great. So we're going to get our little squiggle. We'll do it right there, or do that, or do-do-do's. And we're going to go stick him. Actually, I'm going to move Zoyon out of the way. Get out of the way, Zoyon. It's time for Mr. Squiggles. And he's super tiny. This is a thing I noticed, like for some reason in Blender, it exports very small. So I'm going to just adjust it by just maxing by 10. We get like a size there. I'm just going to make sure he's well underneath 2 meters. He's got a cute size. But he doesn't have he only has like the old single-sided material that he came with. And that's not going to get picked up in the same way. So we're going to stick the squiggle skin and stick it on him. Cool. And we got the little shinies, which is fantastic. So that's basically, that's a VRM ready for exporting to VRM. So we got to make sure that it's selected on the left-hand side where all the sample scene elements are in the scene. And we'll go to the VRM, which is Uni VRM, and we'll basically go to export. And here we'll give him a name. Squiggle. Version 1, author. And that's pretty much all we need. and that should kind of export. There's like also a little kind of PFP you could put in, like a biopic and other few things about it. But at this point in time, we'll just do that, and let's do a CCO because we did it like in no time. One for peeps, and go to export, and I'm just gonna stick that VRM into our current session. I've got VRM squiggle 01 VRM. And that should have worked. So now, hopefully this is it for Unity. So it's gonna like fairly straightforward. Let me just jump in there. Oh wow. Oh, this is cool. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? Let me just so it's not too trippy. We went to the metasphere. That's where it all is. So let me change windows, and we are going to put this guy on GitHub because it's good for troubleshooting. So it's the same as the Mixamo place was, but I'm going to jump from Mixamo, and I've already opened like my GitHub with again. So all we do here is just add a file, upload file, and find my little file where I found the little VRM squiggle. And I'm going to just drag that in, commit changes, and boom, 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 some cool music, and here we go. And he's somewhere there in the midst of all of these other VRMs, because I like making VRMs. Here we go. This is what I meant about naming. So we got like the VRM squiggle naming. So we can see like we basically got to point the location of this VRM so we can start using it. So we have our repository, which is Ogianima VRM, like right here. And then we're going to add that to that. So we're going to get an address, basically. And that address is what it's going to point towards. So yet again, here's one I made earlier in style of style of Blue Peter. Cool. So whatever your GitHub thing is, I recommend like getting a GitHub address and stuff like that. It's basically will be hvs raw.github user content, and for me it's Ogianima, which is my alternate mode, and VRM. So it's basically that, and then the actual name of the character we named it, and you got to make sure it finishes off with VRM. So here I'll just literally take the VRM squiggle VRM and tape that in another thing. And if I grab that, I can jump into Mona, and hopefully, fingers crossed, where should we go? Let's go somewhere simple, localization. Let's go here, tag, and just enter that. So hopefully, boom, 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 boom. I need like little kind of music to kind of to help with all of these little in between places. I think I should take the music from VRM Power that I wrote. I kind of use it. It's a kind of little anticipation styles before we cruise in. So that's converting canvas to the metasphere. Sweet. So that was designed before. Oh, not that. ZX. So you're just waving. So we press 4 to import custom VRM. And here I'm just going to paste that address that I made. And here we go. We got a little squiggle. And he's walking and waving and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Now I'm going to make a hangout. and send you all guys the address to the squiggle. So if you want to jump in, if you're near a desktop, it'd be cool to get loads of squiggles in here. So let's host a hangout. Bada boom. So I've got it clipped, and I'm going to just put it in a chat. Here we go, and I'll throw you a. Why would I use this? So you just the squiggle address. Where's my squiggle address? Where is my squigglor? Oh, too many names. Here we go. Let me just double check that. I have to. Apologies, I deleted by accident. This is it. This is how you make an avatar. You make it and you just delete it, so no one knows what it actually is. So just grab that squiggle again, copy that in, grab that in, go here. Sweet. So I've just pasted the address for it. So basically, now that your guys are in Mona, press 4. And when you press 4, that will be import custom VRM. And just paste that in. And they'll load you a squiggle. Here we go. Got some squiggles happening. Woo! Hello, Mr. Squiggle. How's it going? Hello. And then we can kind of jump somewhere and kind of get like a nice little squiggle group shot. So if you kind of see how many squiggles can we have? Wow, getting squiggles in. So that's the style. Like basically we got like in around an hour, apart from my just yapping, we've got like straight on from creating a VRM avatar to a functional one in the space right here, which is yeah. I'm just gonna take some kind of pics.
Hey, Augie.
Yeah.
So basically, all VRMs. I mean, can you host the VRM elsewhere, or are they just generally hosted on GitHub? And is that what makes them interoperable between different platforms that are currently supporting VRMs?
Fantastic question. So you can do it other ways. GitHub is nice because you can, when you're building your VRM, you can basically update it. So if I had like any problems with this squiggle, I could just update that file and they'll turn up. So they'll have like too many of those things. You can literally mint it and put it on IPFS and then it's there, but obviously you can't fix it then. So if you're really happy, I mean, this is what I did with Metadromoy with the 12. They're all minted. So they're basically up there in the ether and they're basically, if one has the address, one can start using them and stuff like that. And they're existent. They're existent, irrelevant to me. I can't change them. I can change the metadata of the NFT to a degree, but I can't really change the thing. So yeah, which is just kind of super cool. So that's kind of one way of getting like a bunch of VRMs out there to kind of exist in various ways. I mean, you can even like put them on a hosting a site or anything like that. Like there's more than one way of kind of doing it. I just found like GitHub is really good for troubleshooting it, and then you can like basically mint it. There's kind of other kind of options. You can put it straight onto what's it called, Pinata as well. So basically, it's kind of like IPFS pointing. So yeah, and you get like woo. So yeah, hopefully that kind of like answers it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Like things like Ready Player Me, basically they have their own kind of, as far as I know, obviously they have their own kind of database. So you can literally have your own site effectively where you kind of keep everything else, but obviously you have to be your own server, or some people I'm sure put it on AWS as well. So you just have to have the presence in the same way as anything else in a kind of whole crypto space, or just Web3 or Web2.
And does Arweave support this yet?
Sorry?
Does Arweave support it?
Yeah, I can't see a reason why not.
Okay.
I haven't minted anything through Arweave onto with GLB yet, but I'm about to. So I will let you know. I'm literally kind of trying to troubleshoot a VRM in combination with some shape layers to create like this a GLB installation that is going to go on Airweave through Manifold. So yeah, like once I finish the troubleshooting, hopefully it'll be fairly seamless. Theoretically, there's no reason for it not to.
Awesome. Yeah,
and we can all do like a little bit of a dance. Woo! And it's just it's kind of super fun. So yeah, like I just kind of want to kind of in this initial kind of session just show how kind of relatively easy and simple it is. And when you have a nice workflow, you can just create quite cool things fairly quickly without kind of too much problem. And then because you can make simple things quickly, you can start making more complex. You can kind of start digging into it, looking at other options. If you get really into sculpting part of it, you can make it like super complex. You can make caricatures. We can start playing around with this humanoid form. We're kind of stuck with it. Four-legged things are extremely difficult. But yeah, like they definitely kind of help.
How far are we from having mouth animation, mouth movements with VRMs, or do we have them already in eye movement?
What do you mean?
Like, I mean, when you're speaking,
right.
Is it possible? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that they have VRM droids which have eyes and mouths. So they're what do you call them? Like streamers and gamers who use those. It's basically VRM. So it has like eyes and mouths and all of that. It's a bit more, as you'd imagine, it's a bit more complicated, not necessarily harder, but it's just more finicky to do. So like in the sessions, we're basically covering the characters, designs, getting to Metasphere, running and everything else. And that would be, if I was to do like another workshop, I'd go into more kind of facial features. And also because facial features are like, they're very anime dominated in a way, so they're very kind of simplistic, but there are people who are working on getting them more complex as well. So yeah, like I think as we're kind of getting more into this kind of whole kind of what I call spatial computing and combinations between like metahumans, we will start getting kind of a trickle down effect of that through the WebGL space as well.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, well, absolute pleasure. Like it's, I said, hopefully everyone got something out of it. You got a squiggle out of it. So
definitely, it was great introductory workshop, man. Thank you.
Happy days. Like it's so this is just an overview, and I also want to say like if you want to have like this has been recorded, so hopefully I don't think I messed up recording, so we'll kind of put it on fairly quickly, hopefully. Paradox is going to do some editing stuff like that here and there to make it look even cooler. But yeah, like you can then refer back to it. And also check out Matt Empire's series on VRMs. It kind of like, they're super short, around 3 to 5 minutes each. And he'll go to things like basics, like some of the stuff we covered, but also like how to install the Uni VRM into Unity. It's like a 3 minute, 15 seconds video. And literally it's just download it, install it. It just makes it super easy and quick. So yeah.
Is that all on YouTube?
Yeah. It's on Mona channel. So let me just stick a link. YouTube Monaverse Mona. We'll go to playlist, and yeah, here we go. So, beautiful playlist. So yeah, this is really good. This is basically the overview we did today. So I wanted to just get everyone on the same kind of page, and it kind of goes through it, and then we can start digging into like parts in a lot more way. But it's really good for like referencing things as well because they're so short. So kind of like we're building up on that, and hopefully in time to come we'll have a very, very comprehensive database of kind of high-end creations. But yeah, so thank you so much like for for coming to this one. Hopefully everyone kind of like got something out of it, and I wasn't too boring.
Oh, it was great, man. It was very fun. I enjoyed it.
Thanks very much, Doggy. We'll look forward to
Absolute
the
pleasure.
next one.
Yeah. So the next one, let's just set that one up. The next one next week is, if I'm correct, humanoid after all. So excitement. We're going to be building a humanoid VRM template. So we're going to just concentrate on building the template. We're going to be primarily in VR. I'm going to talk about like the actual building of a humanoid template, musculature, how we can kind of basically cheat certain things, the way we perceive
humanoids,
how we can create like the body silhouette and diversification within there, how that works through functionality of the VRM, as well as because we're always telling a story of some kind, the storytelling aspect of it, the verisimilitude. Does it VRM exist in another world? Is it connected to other VRMs? Is it a meme? Is it something deeper? Are you creating your own world? And also really kind of like go back through optimization for WebGL in the process of design. So there's ways of designing things, and that hand thing is going to come in, that you can basically optimize yourself in the early points so that you do as little optimization later as possible. So if you kind of start addressing that thing and build and design and create with that in mind, it really does help. How does a skeletal structure work with a digital? How the template can be done further on, and it'll basically give you the understanding and the knowledge of a basic body shape to build a variety of VRMs, whether it's like building for another community as, you know, work for love, work for hire, or whatever, whether you want to create your own family, a full genera of them, a whole species or whatever, like it opens up these things. So, I mean, I recommend if you have like an hour between now and then, or maybe like hour and a half, to try and do like a super simple VRM. Like even if you're just making like box shapes in Blender, just a box and a box, getting it like in a kind of humanoid, try to get it out and try to kind of like do one before the next session. You really kind of benefit from it because you really kind of understand some of the nuances. And it'll only take like an hour and a half. Like it's not going to take you more than that. I mean, I kind of talked through most of this process, so like it took a bit longer, kind of jumping from recording to recording. But yeah, hopefully that kind of like sums it up. I want to get him to do a wave, so I'm going to do a wave.
Thank you so much, Ogi. Thank you so much for your experience and knowledge and very light spirit. Thank you so much.
Same. Good.
Thanks, Og.
Awesome. Happy days. Let me just...
Thanks, Evie. Ogi, very, very interesting class. Thanks for all.
Awesome. Like, thank you so much, guys, for attending. Like, it's I see it's been quite a big number as well. I was hoping to be like 3 or 4 people, but yeah, this is awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, hopefully see you next week. And if you have your own kind of VRM in the beginning stages, in the introduction, I'm not going to blabber on, you can throw some VRM links in there and we'll basically try them out and have a little, and kind of see what they're like. Or I'll try them at the end of the session. Even that'll be cool. Awesome. I'm going to sign off, and thanks again.